So there's 87 billion neurons.
Mm-hmm.
And
with around 30,000 connection per neuron. And I was a math major. I did my master's in pure mathematics before I moved into medicine. So if we were to do the math on that, you'd multiply 30,000 by 87 billion. So it would end up being 2.1 quadrillion, which if then you do the math on that, which is, what is it, 4 times as many cells in the body.
Just in your
Just
3-pound brain.
Your 3-pound brain. So it's like this bustling city. It's like New York City with all the cars being your brain cells and all the highways being the axon, right? So the more times I travel down one, that myelin gets thicker because it remembers.
Health, fitness, mindset, nutrition. Live better and longer. I'm Saad, and let's hone in.
You talk about, and it seems like it's a real passion of yours, is understanding how to stave off Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
What are the key things I should be doing in order for myself and as well as someone like my mother? And by the way, right, I'm in my early 40s, she's in her 60s, although we tell her she's 25.
Yeah. Okay, let's also start by understanding and defining some terms here. So dementia is the umbrella term that is used for many different forms of dementia. We've got frontotemporal dementia, we've got Alzheimer's disease, we've got vascular dementia. The reason why we hear Alzheimer's disease is because it's the most prevalent. 50 million people worldwide currently have Alzheimer's disease, and that number is said to triple by the year 2050. And when you have a look at what Alzheimer's disease is, it's a neurodegenerative disease. So it means that you degenerate over time. It takes a long time for it to actually come into fruition, which is scary. On that, in terms of neurophysiologists, when you asked me earlier, we tend to focus on demyelinating diseases. And I guess if we were, we should have gone through the anatomy of a brain a bit further, but we'll skip past that. But let's just stay on this Alzheimer's disease.
Hold on, real quickly. Demyelinating.
Yeah.
Can you describe what that is to people?
So the brain is around 3 pounds, okay? And you can think of the consistency as hard jello. You can put your fingers in it, that's what it feels like. You can't put your fingers in it, but if you did put your fingers in your brain, it would feel like hard jello. It consists of around 87 billion neurons. Now these neurons they are brain cells, and they are like the cells in your body. We have trillions of cells in our body. If you go back to year 9 biology, you remember that the cell has a cell body, it has a nucleus, it has ribosomes, it has mitochondria, it has many different things within the cell. Your neuron is the exact same, but the neuron's different in the fact that it has a leg coming off it. And that leg is called an axon. And that axon is covered in myelin. It's a fatty substance, and that myelin is responsible for conduction speed. So thoughts, cross through that myelin. And when it crosses down, it then connects to another neuron and it synapses, okay? And that's how we communicate. That's how our brain cells communicate. We actually have around 30,000 connections per brain cell, which is scary.
Hold on. So there's 87 billion neurons.
And with around 30,000 connection per neuron. And I was a math major. I did my master's in pure mathematics before I moved into medicine. So if we were to do the math on that, you'd multiply 30,000 by 87 billion. So it would end up being 2.1 quadrillion, which if then you do the math on that, which is, what is it, 4 times as many cells in the body.
Just in your 3-pound brain.
Your 3-pound brain. So it's like this bustling city. It's like New York City with all the cars being your brain cells and all the highways being the axon, right? So the more times I travel down one, that myelin gets thicker because it remembers. And if we remember back to when I said I do nerve conduction studies to pick up on multiple sclerosis, there is something or a phenomenon, if we were to do an NCS, we'd see something called a conduction block, meaning that, this nerve, there's a block. So that means that I have to assess this more. Maybe it's multiple sclerosis because I'm seeing a demyelinating effect, meaning that your myelin sheath, there is something wrong there. It's either too thin because the conduction is slow. We've got, decreased conduction happening, which it's slower than the average, which could be, we have to think, is that, what could that be? It could be myasthenia gravis. It could be another demyelinating disorder. If it's complete conduction block, then that's pretty scary, right?
I would almost argue that anytime you tell me that I have a demyelinating disease, it is terrifying.
I'm not telling you that.
Yeah, but if you were
If
to
I
say
was
it,
to say that, yes.
that's terrifying.
Well, look, one of the most terrifying demyelinating disorders is ALS,
Mm-hmm.
and that
Seen
is
it.
it is
It's horrible.
horrific. Okay,
Yeah.
we call it motor neurons disease in Australia. Same thing, and it is. Myasthenia gravis. It's also all of these demyelinating disorders are. However, I will say that MS is not a death sentence. And there's people with MS go on to live very long and prosperous lives because of medication and pharmaceuticals. But we got too far into this. I think we were discussing Alzheimer's disease.
Yep.
So I hope everyone's still with us. But 50 million people worldwide, number is set to triple by the year 2050. Now, there's around 30 genes involved in Alzheimer's disease, 3 of which are pretty much, we call it 100% penetrant genes, meaning that, so for example, Huntington's disease, if you have, mutation on chromosome 4, you will get, there is nothing, we can't do anything about it. Alzheimer's disease, there's around 30 genes, but only 3 of them really determine that, yes, you will get Alzheimer's. The rest of them are just risk genes.
Mm-hmm.
So out of these 50 million people worldwide, we could say that 97% of them are driven by lifestyle factors. And the 3%, they were genetically going to get some form of dementia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we hear about this apolipoprotein, APOE, APOE4. People get scared of it. And yes, if you have 1 copy, it does increase your risk of getting Alzheimer's disease. If you have 2 copies, it further increases your risk for getting Alzheimer's disease. Just the same as if there is wet floor and if I go running, you increase your risk of breaking your leg if you run across that.
Doesn't mean it's going to happen.
Doesn't mean it's going to happen. But for somebody like me, if I was to run on that, then yes, it would happen. So you've got risk genes. Now, a risk gene means if we switch it on like a light switch, it means you've turned it on and you're going to increase your risk. But if you turn it off, you decrease your risk. It's baffling to me. So there was a study done on in Nigeria. Many people there have 2 copies of APOE4, but they never get Alzheimer's disease. Why is that?
They're active?
Because their lifestyle is so much better. Okay, so Alzheimer's disease, we're going to stay on that. We know the prevalence now. We know that they're just risk factors. So, okay, Louisa, why do 50 million people worldwide have it?
Hold on, or 150 around the corner.
150 around the corner, yeah. And it's going to be a fast, and they say by 2050, I'm pretty sure it's going to be 2040. Not just that. If you have a look at how much the US is spending, it's spending way more, I believe, actually, maybe just in line with the amount that we spend on cancer. It's the exact same with Alzheimer's disease. It's going to be the collapse of the global
system.
economy, yeah. So it's scary. And so what are we doing? We could, right now, we could talk about 15 modifiable risk factors for Alzheimer's disease, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to tell you the ones that are really going to move the needle and why. And they are exercise, sleep, and nutrition interventions. Just accounting for nutritional interventions alone can decrease your risk of Alzheimer's disease by 60%.
So you're saying I could have 2 APOE4 genes that have been activated, that have increased my risk factor. But if I'm just eating right, that's it.
Well,
just
following
eating right.
a specific diet, they did this through the MIND diet.
Okay,
Yeah.
Tell me about this diet.
It's the MIND, I might butcher, but it stands for Mediterranean Interventional diet, something like that. Yeah, so pretty much a Mediterranean diet, which consists mainly of around 70% fruits, vegetables, little bit of grains, red meat,
Yep.
olive oil, and fish. Okay, so they didn't take out red meat. I know there's a lot of prominent figures in Alzheimer's disease. Actually, not very many, but just there are some people who believe that having a plant-based diet is much better for a healthy brain. I consume meat, and I don't tell anyone to go on the vegan diet or the plant-based diet. So just accounting for that alone can dramatically, decrease your odds of getting Alzheimer's disease. But then we've got exercise. Now, currently, right now, alongside Dr. Tommy Wood, who is a phenomenal physician and scientist, we're publishing a lot. That's what takes up a lot of my time. But I have a deep passion for it.